Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. As you can see this grotesque creature in front of me. This is something that I want to talk about just for a little bit. Just want to do a little video on something like this because I think it's very interesting. And human interaction with it is very interesting as well. It has interesting features about it. It's got an interesting history with people. And I think people will enjoy it. So, anyways. This is the olm. At least that's what we call it in English. In where it lives, in the local areas, they call it the human fish. Because of this color. Because where it lives is in Europe. And so it looks like skin color. And so they call it the human fish. Also called the Proteus. So, which is a Greek term, as you can see from this Wikipedia article. But this is mostly, this name isn't used very much. Like I said, mostly the locals will call it the human fish. And for English, we just call it the olm, the O-L-M. And it is a amphibian that lives in caves. It's a cave-dwelling amphibian. So, and it's purely cave-dwelling. So it's scientifically called a troglobite. And one way you can tell that it lives in caves is because of this pale skin. It's got no pigment basically. We will get into the details of that. And it has almost no eyes. If you can see right here, there it has what used to be eyes. And these things, they eat pretty much anything that's in the cave, anything that can fit in its mouth. Usually like little shrimp or little bugs, little fish, because it's an ambush predator. They aren't slow. They do have very slow metabolism though, and one of the benefits of a slow metabolism is that they can live very long. Among with other details, these things can actually live around 100 years. I'm not even joking. This thing, this about foot-long creature that lives in complete darkness, can live for 100 years. Allegedly. I've not actually seen any like real evidence of like, oh, here's an olm that's 100 years old, look at him. But that's what's claimed about it. So yeah. And one of the reasons they can live so long is that metabolism I mentioned. Their metabolism is very slow. Their digestion is very slow. They don't burn very much energy. They can move quite fast, but they're not they don't burn much energy at all. But one of the other reasons is that the water it lives in, this cave water, doesn't have much oxygen because plant matter in these caves is almost non-existent. I think all the oxygen that comes in the water from these caves is from outside sources, like rain and maybe like outside like water, maybe just dissolved oxygen in groundwater. Aquatic animals with lower oxygen intake live longer. So basically because their cells don't decay as fast, they're basically going through slow motion. Their lives are through slow motion. So they can live to a century, basically, allegedly. And another upside to this kind of slow lifestyle is that they can allegedly, they can go around 8 years without eating anything. Because they actually have a behavior where they can slow down the metabolism even more. So it's pretty handy when you're living in a cave where you might just, like, let's say these guys, they just waddle into a spot that just doesn't have much food. And then they have to blindly find a way out of that spot. That might take a little while, especially when your body looks like this, right? Maybe there's a part of a cave that just is totally devoid of life. So here's the comparison. A lot of people know about this, the axolotl. And as you can see, the olm is its Slenderman grotesque cousin. It's a horrifying cousin with no face. As you can see here, it does have a mouth. So, and it does have teeth, as we saw right here. That's kind of, you can't really see that, but does have teeth, as you can see. They are around the same size. I think the ulm is a lot longer, though, as you can see here. The axolotls are much more salamander-shaped. They're a lot more normal shaped than the ulm. And one thing you can notice in this image is the axolotl has a lot more gills. A lot more gills. Because the axolotl, their lifestyle is a lot more active than the ulm. And besides, the waters they live in have more oxygen. At least that's what I read. They should. I know there's a lot of different types of axolotls, so that might not be a broad description. But the ulms have much smaller gills because of that, right? The slow lifestyle, the low oxygen, blah blah blah. So you can see that very stark difference there. Because these are extremist animals. Extreme. It's a radical. Extremist. Kind of nothing special, other than, I guess they're see-through, so you can see the whole development, which is pretty cool. So you can see them kind of grow in the egg. And then this is what they look like when they're born. So you can see that little back leg. It's very small. Basically, it doesn't exist yet. But something you can notice, look at these eyes. Right? These aren't axolotls. They're ulms. Right? You can see the eye here. Basically gone. But here, when they're small, they do have those eyes. Something that is noticeable about the ulm is that technically its skin is its eye. Its skin is its eyes. I'm not even joking. It's photoreceptive skin. So, and by the way, these things have no predators. They have no predators. I saw one article where it was describing the ulm's only predator is literally just sunlight, like a vampire. Because of this photoreceptive skin, if it went into the sunlight, it would suffer horribly. Immense pain. Because that radiation, that high light onto its skin, would just obliterate it. As you can see, they do have lights in these caves. We'll get into... So yeah, in these caves, this is what most of these caves will look like. Pretty much all of them look like this. This is where they would live. As you can see, there's lights. This one's not very accurate, because I think this is sunlight. But they do put lights in these caves. But mostly it's the sunlight itself that harms the ulm, and not so much the light itself. I think they do try to flee the light, though. As you can see, this is a baby ulm in its full glory. His little arms, and you can see his eyes. Look, he looks like a regular salamander. It looks like a germinating salamander, much like the axolotl. When they're born like this, they look like a salamander to be, basically. But then, almost immediately, they hit a different direction than a regular salamander's growth would be. Their genetics get into gear and they turn into this thing. So that's something that's very interesting about these animals, is that they could be salamanders, but they aren't. And then I read something that basically, if you do expose these things, same with axolotls, if you expose them to brief amounts of light for their entire lifetime, they can get pigment. So there is a type of ulm called the black ulm, where it has... Here, let me look it up. Black ulm. Nope. That is not the black ulm. The black ulm. There he is. There he is. As you can see, he even has his eyes a little bit. Because this is actually a subspecies of black ulm that can tolerate sunlight. And the reason he can tolerate sunlight is because his skin isn't as photoreceptive, and he's got pigment, so that his body's protected, his skin's protected, basically. So, and you can see these babies do have a little bit of pigment, but like I said, once he breaks free like this, eventually those genes kick into gear and he turns into this thing. He was born to be a freak. But he wasn't always a freak. So, and this is very deceptive. I mean, this is, like you can see, this is kind of for tourism. But these caves, naturally, they would just be pitch black. You wouldn't see anything. There's no light in these caves. Obviously, there'd be light at the entrance, but you wouldn't see light pretty much any point in these caves. So as we can see on the wiki here, this is its range. No, obviously this isn't my source, but I just thought this picture was good. And then this, as you can see, this is a very old drawing of the Olm, because this, as we're going to see, is a very old part of the world. And for context here, as Americans, we always, when researching animals like this, you'll always hear, okay, let's say in Salt Lake City, or that's probably not a good example. In California, there's like some salamander, there's some creature, and right, it's always the same story, right? The American tribes, they had a name for it, and they maybe they had some recipe for the creature to eat it, or to use its skin for something, and then right, the Americans came over, and then we started studying them, and you know the rest of the story. However, because this is a very old part of the world, Croatia and Slovenia are part of a very old part of the world, and like complex civilization has been here for a very long time. And so these Olms have been a part of their civilization for thousands of years, literally. And so we have images like this. We have anecdotes from hundreds of years ago. It's because it lives in these dark caves. It lives in these dark caves that a lot of them, I think for a long time, were just completely inaccessible. At least portions of the caves were just completely inaccessible because, I mean, they didn't have flashlights, right? Most of history, these people don't have flashlights. You have a candle at best. And so you're not going to venture very deep into the cave, especially if it gets pretty narrow. And so these Olms, people really didn't know much about them, except when there was big rainstorms and things, where sometimes these caves, they would flood, their water would be spilled out of the cave itself, and these Olms would go with the water. And so in places like Slovenia, there's a reason they call them baby dragons. It's because when they would come out of these caves, right, when there's a big rainstorm, there's a bit of a flood, right, you're in your village, you're kind of cleaning up after the flood, and you're finding all these creatures just lying around, hundreds of them lying around your village, right? And so they thought, they didn't know what they were. They thought they were baby dragons. Baby dragons, that they were like the newborn offspring of giant creatures that lived underground. And they didn't know that they were actually just fully grown. Horrors beyond their comprehension, just laying underneath the land. And that these were their babies. Fast forward in time. So that what I was talking about was more like 1600s. So fast forward, I think 1800s. We have the Austrian Empire. So that's about these countries right here. Let me outline it. And these countries: Hungary, Austria, Czechia, Slovakia, Croatia, Slovenia. So this is kind of the Austrian Empire here. And so you have the Austrian Emperor, and the cave, I think, either here or here, there's a very famous cave, and it's the cave that started the study of cave creatures, and it's because the Austrian Empire, or the Austrian Emperor, at one point he visited the cave around here, the very famous cave. I think it's this cave. I think it's this cave here. Yeah, it's the post. I'm not going to pronounce that, but so it's this cave here that he visited. And when he visited, it became a tourist spot. so it became very famous in the area, and it got caught the eye of the new scientific order that was being formed at the time, because this was the 1800s. And so it basically, his visit to this cave and leading to the scientists, or the new scientists studying the caves for the first time, basically created that study of cave creature research. And so the Olm became a kind of a national symbol for Slovenia. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was a cool story, cool fact. Oh, and here's a great photo. Yeah, here's a great photo. This basically sums up what if you ever actually saw an Olm, this is what the situation would be. It would be you with your flashlights in just pitch black water, basically. And you would see these creatures wiggling around in the water. And yeah, a lot of these places have castles inside these caves. Because again, this is a very old part of the world, so natural parks didn't exist in these areas of the world for thousands of years. So you'll just have large structures inside the caves with the Olms. So yeah, I just want to do a brief talk on that. There's some other subjects I want to talk about on the channel, but this is, I thought it'd be interesting to just kind of chat about these things. Obviously do your own research, but yeah, all right, thank you.